talk today the hidden costs of life in the pool. The key themes in this episode will be general health benefits versus hidden risks of swimming, misconceptions about swimming being the safest sport, and case studies and articles on long-term swimmer health. A 5-year survey from the NCAA revealed that overall elite swimmer injury rates were 4 injuries per 1,000 hours of training for men and 3.78 for women. Shoulder injuries are the most common injuries, with prevalence between 40% and 91%. What assumptions do most casual swimmers make about injury risk, and how might those assumptions change when they see the NCAA injury data?
I think that numbers always give more prevalence and hard concrete data, and kind of acknowledging the fact that it is real. I think we kind of brisk by injuries as a swimmer. We just think that it's part of swimming and that's what you have to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, we have both been through multiple injuries during our swimming career. And I think once you see these numbers, it's pretty shocking and it brings it into relevance in everyday life, which is pretty scary.
1,000 hours, it's not a lot. So let's do the math on that real quick. For an average swimmer versus an elite swimmer versus a casual swimmer. For every 1,000 hours, 3 to 4 injuries essentially is what we're going to be seeing. A casual swimmer, I would say, swims 1 to 2 hours a week. So we'll put that at 2 hours a week times 4, that's 8 hours a month, times 12, 96 hours in a year. It would take a very casual swimmer 10.5 years to have any risk of 1 injury. So a swimmer who swims a little bit more consistent, let's say 6 hours a week, 288 hours a year, would be about 3.5 years. So now we're increasing that time frame. Someone who swims 2 hours a day, which is usually the average swimmer who's consistently training, would have a 2-hour practice every single day, and let's say 5 days a week. That's 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month, 480 hours a year. It would take that swimmer 2 years to have an overusage injury. And then the person who swims elite. So anyone who swims 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, more in terms of the elite kind of structure here, like me and V, that's going to be 4 hours per day, and we'll assume 5 days a week, even though we have done more. That's 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month, 960 hours a year. So you can clearly see 960 hours. So it would take about a year, to therefore have an injury. So if you're not prepping correctly, if you're not training outside of the pool correctly, it is pretty much inevitable that you will have pain in your shoulders. That's non-negotiable. Focus on your functional training and your strength. Otherwise, you will run into that problem no matter what.
And that's not even counting the hours of swim meets. So that is adding additional hours because swim meets are so long. And you have your warm-up, and then you have to give your 100% full ability on whichever event that you are doing. And you have such a big time frame in between, so you have to warm up in between each of your events.
In a 2025 study looking at injury patterns and frequency in swimming, the findings revealed a higher incidence of injuries in female swimmers compared to males, with the shoulders being the most frequently affected joint. So again, validating what we're saying about swimmers, but female swimmers definitely beware because we are at higher risk than our male counterparts. The rotator cuff is one of the hardest things to deal with because of just how the joint is placed and how the muscle overlaps over it. So if you have an injury or a rotator cuff issue, it could take weeks to truly kind of get that pain or specific impingement healed.
I think that's super important to know because once you know your muscles, you know what you should work on. And I think the rotator cuff is really important to work on with swimming. We have our supraspinatus on top, then we have the infraspinatus below the spine of the scapula. then we have our teres minor, and then we have our subscapularis. Those are the 4 muscles of the rotator cuff. All those 4 muscles attach to the humerus. So it's one spot with 4 muscles. I think that is a really big thing that you should focus on, especially because we are rotating our shoulder the entire time with swimming. I think it is really important to understand certain muscles in the body, because how else are you supposed to know what we are working out while we swim? And swimming uses a good chunk of muscles. So you should get a general understanding of the body. But then it comes to the injuries, where how are you supposed to prevent those injuries if you don't know what muscles are mainly used during swimming?
Let's go into health effects from swimming and training in chlorinated pools. So a simple immediate danger that we tend to not think of is what we're swimming in, and that's chlorine. And chlorine has a lot of negative health effects, especially when you are chronically swimming in it long term. Chloramines in the water irritate the skin, the eyes, and the respiratory tract, particularly indoors. As well as during 2015 to 2017, pool chemical injuries led to an estimated 13,508 U.S. emergency department visits, 1/3 in persons under 18 years old. How does knowing that the over 13,000 pool chemical related ER visits occurred in just 3 years changes the way you view pool safety?
I think I know there are many people in this world, but even the fact that we have such a high number for just that specific
2-year range, 2015 to 2017, we got 13,000 cases of people under the age of 18 getting affected.
Yeah, that is very sad, especially knowing that I grew up swimming indoors and I would be there every single day. So that is pretty scary, because as we said in our other episode, like, being in that space, you can smell the chlorine, and that's not, I don't know chemistry, but I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. So
yeah, I mean,
chemicals,
especially with what the CDC is saying, they're saying specifically, particularly indoors is where you're going to see the biggest effects. And so there's a lot of states that are warmer that have pools outside. There's a lot of states, up north that are going to have pools inside. And I grew up, swimming in the north and swimming in indoor pools, and I, at my highest level of swimming, still had to bring an inhaler during practices. So that's the level of chlorine that builds up and clouds the lungs and irritates the eyes, and everything like that. And so it's definitely something to consider when you are swimming as frequently as 2 to 4 hours a day.
I'll add in a little story of my own. I remember that, with swimming, automatically you think that you have really good lungs. Ties in with the inhaler issue. Well, I remember going to the doctor, and they were doing a test for me to see if I had asthma, and the test was inconclusive because I literally could not inhale enough and then exhale with so much pressure. So I honestly never knew if I had asthma or not, or if I do now. Obviously it's not severe since I'm okay, but the fact that I should have a really good lung capacity and I can't even do an asthma test, I think that really shows.
Having pools that are outside and having pools that are based in salt water, more so than chlorine, will definitely help. So there are ways to offset, the intensity of chlorine, like using saltwater pools. And I think that if we try to be more innovative and have better air ventilation, it's not so humid and cloggy and very potent, like a smoke that you're breathing in, then that's where we'll actually see better change and better change health-wise for our swimmers, including us.
Thank you guys for tuning in to episode 1, the hidden cost of life in the pool. In our next episode, we're going to dive into how swimming hurts the pro. but benefits the average swimmer.
So stay tuned and just keep swimming.